Welcome to the Crowd Zion College Football Show with Lou Holtz and Mark May. My name is Kevin Trimble. I'm your monitor. Could not be happier to be here for Week 4 college football with our two legends, our two football experts, College Hall of Famer, two-time Super Bowl champion Mark May, and College Football Hall of Famer and National Championship coach Lou Holtz. Gentlemen, it's been an exciting week, but I've got to tell you what's even more exciting about this week is that yes, we have people going to the crowdline.com to compete in our contest. We have people downloading the Crowdline app. But more importantly, what we did this week in Week 4, we put together the Crowdline podcast. So all these shows are currently on the Crowdline College Football Show podcast, and you can download it on the iTunes Store or go to Google Play. So I will tell you, as I told Mark, I did some yard work listening to the podcast. I encourage you and your friends to do the same at home. So with that said, gentlemen, pretty exciting week, but I think what I'm just going to do, I'm going to throw a little chum in the water first and get you two stirred up. First of all, we got some upsets. We got some upsets once again, another upset, another freshman kicker. This one a little bit more mature, made some things happen against what we probably now call the angry honey badger, if you really want to think about that. And then more importantly, Arizona State. Look what, come on, Coach. Herm Edwards. Get them ready, get them ready. You know what? You got to keep them ready. We'll see how that goes. Troy University of Troy, Alabama goes out to Lincoln, Nebraska. And I'm going to tell you right now, gentlemen, talk about this. Coach Neal Brown, the product of Danville, Kentucky, Boyle County High School, University of Kentucky, from the Hal Mumme coaching tree. Maybe it's about time he moves up from that $800,000 a year bracket into that next level of coaching. And then we talk about Florida State. Florida State, gentlemen, we've seen Florida State, and it wasn't that Eric Dungey. It was Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito took care of business against Florida State for Syracuse. Willie Taggart is 1-2. That's pretty tough. And any other upsets we can think. So, gentlemen, there's some chum. Let's take it. Mark, let's talk about BYU, Wisconsin. What are you thinking?
I thought BYU did a terrific job, particularly going on the road to Camp Randall and beating Wisconsin in their place. They ran the ball effectively, but what really got me was the way that they were able to shut down Wisconsin's offense, holding them to just a few touchdowns in that game, Coach. I thought that was really big. And the way that they hung in the game like that, they also traveled to Arizona for the season opener and beat Arizona at Arizona virtually the same way.
I agree with you completely, Mark. Here, Wisconsin has 10 starters back on offense, great offensive line. Last year, Mr. Taylor rushed for 1,900 yards, 26 carries, a total of 117 yards, whereas you look at Canada on the other side for BYU, only carried the ball 11 times for 110 yards. That was the difference.
Well, Coach, I would also say the big difference was freshman kicker Skylar Southam, who, after high school 2016, went on his LDS mission to Chile, worked up in the mountains in Chile and doing his thing, but then he came back and you know what? He really did his thing. Now, he's a 20-year-old freshman, but they put him out there to go put one at 45-yard field goal in Camp Randall. Think about that. That's pressure, and he came through.
How about talking about Wisconsin's place kicker that missed a 42-yarder and would have sent the game into overtime?
Well, I'm not sure if they went to Chile looking for him. Maybe they should have. Mark, I think he's a dear friend of yours. I'm a huge fan. Herm Edwards, no better coach to get the team up and ready to go. Probably need to get the team constant, smooth, and stay on plane. What do you think, Mark? Big, tough loss there.
Well, that was a tough loss for Arizona State going down the road for the first time of the season. Danny Gonzalez, their defensive coordinator, warned his football team, and I heard his press conference before, guys, get ready for this game. They're going to try to hammer you, just like they did last year when they beat you. They're going to line up with two tights, a fullback, and an H-back. They're going to run the ball down your throat, so you better be ready. Guess what? They weren't ready. San Diego State and Rocky Long's team was well coached in this game, Coach. They rushed it 52 times for 311 yards. Arizona State was the #1 rushing defense in the country going into that football game, and they just got pummeled at the line of scrimmage.
No doubt they got beat severely on the line of scrimmage, but you had to be impressed with the quarterback for Arizona State, Mark. What a great leader, what a great competitor. He threw for over 300 yards, just wasn't enough.
Coach, I'm going to lead off with this one for you first. You got Neal Brown in Troy University, goes out to Nebraska. Had a tough one against Boise State, but go out to Lincoln and take care of business in Lincoln. Is Troy Brown one of the most underrated coaches that's out there right now that's ready to go to the next level, Coach?
Well, every week you have a different team. You're a different coach based on the team you have. But wonderful victory for Troy. That's why I thought that they would play so well in their opening game, where I was disappointed against Boise State. Last year, I think that they had a big upset at LSU. The year before, they almost had Clemson. But let's not get down on Nebraska yet. He lost his starting quarterback. The other quarterback transferred. He's playing the third string. I think a walk-on, had a couple interceptions. And remember, when Scott Frost went to UCF his first year, I think he was something like 3-9, something of that nature. And then he turned the thing completely around. Nebraska fans, you stay with him. He will get the job done.
The worst thing about this, Kevin and Coach, Troy not only comes in the stadium, beat you on the football field, but they walk away with $1 million plus if you're money. If you're a fan of Nebraska, you got to be upset about that.
Well, I think that $1 million will go a long way for the next time they play. They're going to bring the Song of the South, Troy Marching Band. It's a big deal. We're going to hear from them this week and on this show. But I'm telling you, Troy has done it again, upset, and Neil Brown is a big part of that. Now, we could talk real quick about Akron. Terry Bowden beat Northwestern, okay? Well, I think Northwestern, something's holding them back. But let's move on to Tallahassee. That's more important. Go up to Syracuse. We said last week, tough time against Samford's quarterback. So if that's bad, what are they going to do against Syracuse? Eric Dungy has what's called an eye irritation, and Tommy DeVito comes in, leads 2 scoring drives. That game wasn't even close. Mark, talk about Florida State and where's this going?
Well, they're going downhill in a hurry, and when you look at the cover, it was kind of bare and Jimbo Fisher left, particularly on the offensive line and for defensive stars on the defensive side of the ball in the secondary. But the key of this football game is Dino Babers had his team ready to play. I told you last week, Syracuse is going to get somebody in the dome because they usually do. They got Clemson last year. This time around, they got Florida State, and they just pummeled Florida State. The crowd was into it. It was hard to hear. And what they did was smart. They didn't turn the air conditioning on in the dome, so it was about 95 degrees in the dome, and it kind of wore down Florida State. Plus, with that up-tempo offense, Coach, they had no chance, particularly in the second half.
Hey, Mark, it's 95 degrees in Florida all the time where Florida State is. You talk about the cupboard being bare. 5 straight years they've had a top 5 recruiting class under Jimbo Fisher. Now you tell me they don't have any athletes. Let me tell you what this week shows to me. The first couple weeks, you don't know what you have. Maybe Virginia Tech's not as good as we thought because they embarrassed Florida State in the opening game. You think, wow, they must be great. That doesn't mean they're necessarily that good. We thought Northwestern, wow, they beat Purdue. That's great. Purdue is 0-3. Northwestern is 1-2. They've lost to Duke and they've lost to Akron since then. So you can't tell what kind of team you have early in the year. Maybe Notre Dame's a little bit better than we thought because of how impressive they beat Michigan and what Michigan has done since then.
Always comes back to Notre Dame. One thing about the Florida State kids, what I watched down the sidelines, was their body language. They had terrible body language. They were slumped on the sidelines. It was almost like, get this game over with, get us on the plane and get us back home. They didn't want to play the fourth quarter against Syracuse. That's one thing I kept my eye on those kids from Florida State.
Well, that's a very good observation on that, Mark. And, the other guys having difficulties, Chad Morris at Arkansas. They get beat by North Texas State, I think, 44-10. Now, the one thing you have to remember, Chad Morris and the coach of Florida State have big-time jobs. Both of them have a losing career record.
Good point.
Well, Coach, maybe don't have to win to make a lot of money. That's the way I see it.
No, because you win doesn't mean you make a lot. Most I made was $135,000. They paid Charlie Weis $19 million to leave. Is this
you
a
still
great
won't let
country
that
or
go.
what?
You won't let that go, will you?
I didn't have the right get back, Coach.
Well, Coach, I guess coaching is still a better investment than the lottery, but we'll see. Well, gentlemen, that was a great week. But the games that we picked is, we picked some pretty 4 good games. And Bama at Ole Miss, LSU at Auburn, Ohio State at TCU, Vanderbilt at Notre Dame. And our college football show contest for the last 3 weeks, just so you know. Week 1, Coach up 4-3. Week 2, Coach up 3-1. Week 3, Mark up 2-1. Total, Coach, you're in the lead on the college football show contest 9-5. And then this week, Bama, Ole Miss, Coach, you won with the spread. You were closer. LSU, Auburn, that was a push. I think you both might have picked Auburn. Coach, is that right? Or Do we do
I said on TV last week
mulligan?
I could feel just as comfortable going with LSU, but I just felt that Mark really knew what was going on. First time I followed him, it'll be the last time I follow Mark.
Well, Coach, somehow we've misplaced that reshoot we did after school last week. But Ohio State, TCU, Mark, you both picked OSU. Mark, you had that with the spread. That was a lot closer, I think, than people think. And Vandy at Notre Dame, Coach, you picked Notre Dame to win. But first, let's talk about Alabama at Ole Miss. Coach Holtz, you just said, and I wasn't sure if it was tough or great. I think it was great. You said down at Ole Miss in Oxford, that's a great place to play. I think Alabama agrees with you because for about the first 11 seconds, Jordan Ta'amu was the best quarterback on the field. But for the next 59 minutes and 49 seconds, he was about the third best quarterback on the field because the wheels came off and they came off quickly. 75-yard touchdown pass on the opening play, hey, that's exciting. But Alabama just kind of turned it and said, no, not here. We're coming to your place. We really like to play here. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts? Mark, can anybody but the Eagles beat Alabama?
I don't think Alabama's going to lose this season. The way that they're playing right now, they're hitting on all cylinders. Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback, and Jalen Hurts both had touchdown passes in this game. They almost scored half 100 on Ole Miss's defense by halftime. It was 49-7. This game was over before it started. After the first drive for Ole Miss, they were out of this football game. They could run the ball. They could throw the ball. They did exactly what they wanted in this game, tough on special teams. And you look the way that they're playing, particularly on defense, I'm really impressed with their defense because they lost 4 linebackers. Remember, they lost 2 in the spring and then 2 got hurt in fall camp. So they're down 4 linebackers, and they're still playing top-notch defense, but their offense is a machine, Coach.
There's no doubt. This is the best Alabama team he's had. He's won, 5 national championships. But I think Georgia can give him a shot, and I think A&M, which we'll talk a little bit later, has a chance against him. But let's remember this also. Ole Miss, I think the week before, played Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois had 35 points at halftime. So let's not put the Ole Miss defense in the Hall of Fame yet.
Well, gentlemen, our second game, we're going to call it a press. LSU at Auburn. That was tough guy football down on the plains. You both picked Auburn, so we're pressing on that one. But if you look at the stats, yardage were about the same, except Jarrett Stidham had 2 interceptions. That was the big key. Mark, get your thoughts, and Cole, you can talk about your new favorite person on the Bayou. Talk to us, Mark.
Joe Burrow, the quarterback, was 15 for 34. But what he's doing, he's managing this offense. He's not making mistakes. And particularly when you look at the last drive in the fourth quarter when they went for it on 4th and 7, they had to get the first down. He got the job done. Ed Orgeron's done a terrific job with this football team, keeping them in games no matter what happens. You look at the first game against Miami, they were dominant in that game. This game dominant again defensively. Dave Aranda, their defensive coordinator, has done a fantastic job. He's worth every penny they're paying him as the highest paid defensive coach in college football. Their defense is filthy, Coach.
Well, LSU just moved up to number 6 in the country. First of all, to go into Auburn and win, I mean, that's quite an accomplishment in the SEC. And Auburn's a very, very good football team. But the difference between LSU this year and previous years, Mark, they jump out on top 10-0. Here comes Auburn, comes back, takes the lead 14-10. Normally, LSU would fold. Things that start going wrong, then start pressing, then make mistakes. But no, down 14-10 in a hostile environment. They kept their poise. I think you have to give a lot of credit to Burrow. I think you have to give a lot of credit to Ed Orgeron, the coach, head coach at LSU. But that's a different LSU football team. They're outstanding on defense. They don't beat themselves on offense. And they have a great kicker in Cole Tracy. That's the difference, Mark.
Okay, Mark, your look says it all. Mark, I understand Cole Tracy, but you got to admit, Cole Tracy is about the coolest thing in Baton Rouge since Gavin Gray. And I'm going to tell you right now, the way I watch how Coach just loves old Cole Tracy and all these kickers, but more importantly, how that Baton Rouge fan base likes Cole Tracy. Mark, I'm going to get Mark Mosey's phone number. Coach, I'm going to get Dr. Reggie Ho's phone number. I'm going to teach my kids to be kickers because you know what? It's paying off down there in Louisiana. And
let me set the record straight right now. In order for those kickers to get an attempt at a field goal, what has to happen? The offense has to take the team down the field so they get the opportunity. So the offensive line has to protect the quarterback and block for their running backs and get the ball in position for the kicker to even have an opportunity to kick the field goal.
Hey, Mark, the reason he's kicking a field goal because the offense screwed up. If they hadn't screwed up, he'd be kicking an extra point. He's the eraser trying to erase the mistakes the offensive line made.
Well, gentlemen, next for LSU, Louisiana Tech Bulldogs are coming in. We're going to talk about that later. And Auburn has Arkansas. So, as you know, Arkansas is currently working on punt coverage right now and seeing what a fair catch looks like. But the next game, Ohio State at TCU. Been talking about this for a long time. It was going to be the first real team, the first team that is supposed to compete, the first team that, you know, they have 85 scholarships, but these guys can play some real football that Ohio State was going to go to. In Jerry's World, in Dallas, with head coach Ryan Day manning the sidelines until Urban Meyer comes back full time, which is this week. But this game goes 40-28, and we talk about that. A lot of people say, oh, it was a blowout. Nah, I don't think it was a blowout. Mark, what are your thoughts on that game?
Very close football game, as I thought it would be. If TCU doesn't turn the ball over and make some mistakes on special teams, they win this game. If you look at Darius Anderson, their running back, another running back against this vaunted Ohio State defense goes for over 150 yards against them. And not only that, Gary Anderson has a very young football team, particularly on offense. They had the lead at halftime, 14-13. If they don't come out in the second half and had a bad third quarter, they have a really good chance of winning this football game. Nick Bosa goes out with a groin injury. He won't play this week. But I still think the key of this football game was the way that Gary Patterson played on both sides of the ball. He kept his team in it, kept them focused, and they had a chance to win this game even in the fourth quarter. I thought that was important. That's why the score was so close.
TCU has a lot of talent, Mark. As I said last week, they have 3 4-star quarterbacks. They have 3 4-star running backs. They have speed. They have excellent wide receivers. They play very, very aggressive on defense. I like you, Mark. A little disappointed the way Ohio State's played defense this year. They lost Joey Bosa, the great pass rusher, early in the football game. But the one thing the Ohio State defense did, they scored 2 touchdowns on defense or set it up, and that was the difference in the football game. I think both of them are outstanding football teams, but let's give an awful lot of credit to Haskins, the quarterback at Ohio State. He's for real. I love the way Dobbins and Weber, the 1-2 at running back, that's a hard combination to stop.
Well, Coach, I think Joey Bosa, I think, is also injured with the Chargers. But Nick Bosa, the Buckeyes, he got injured as well. It's a family affair there. Something to note, TCU outrushed Ohio State 203-182. That was very, very, I mean, that's kind of telling. Maybe they're not that great, but they're still both really great teams. Next up, Ohio State. Sorry, Coach.
It was an 87-yard run for a touchdown that TCU had that really turned that completely around.
Well, Coach, they got to keep happening, just like 14 points off turnovers, as you've seen. But next up, Tulane Green Wave comes to Ohio State. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And TCU in Texas, down in Austin. And, hey, is Texas back? We're going to find that out. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Our last game of the College Football Show contest was Vanderbilt at Notre Dame. And you two gentlemen, we talked about that. We talked about 1.2 yards a carry. Talked about SAT scores. Talked about who has a new defense, who has an old defense, who can throw, who can't throw. Mark, I want to hear you talk about your thoughts because, Mark, you picked Vandy. Coach, you picked Notre Dame. What do you think, Mark?
Kyle Shermer threw for over 300 yards against this vaulted Notre Dame defense. The Golden Domers were almost crying walking out of the stadium because they knew how close this was, Coach. Notre Dame doesn't jump on them in the first quarter and take a 10-0 lead. Guess what? They get outscored 17-12 the remaining 3 quarters. They were in this game. Brandon Wimbush, again, could not throw the ball effectively. Yes, Notre Dame outrushed them in this football game. But I'll tell you what, Ian Book may be the real deal at the quarterback position for Notre Dame. He may be able to solve their problems. The reason why? 3 for 3 and a touchdown. Why not put him in for more snaps in these games? I know Brandon Wimbush is your guy. He can run the offense and can run the football. But I'll tell you what, this kid looked pretty good in his snaps at the quarterback position.
He's the one that came in and beat LSU in the fourth quarter last year in the bowl game. And Ian Booker, he also has the Lou Holtz locker. We donate a locker, but I pulled for him a little bit. But let's remember this, Bart. I said last week the difference between Notre Dame this year and last year, what was keeping them from being a great football team was their inability to run the football. They were like 107th in rushing. They rushed for over 240 yards against a good Vanderbilt defense. You can talk about not throwing this guy, that guy. Notre Dame is 3-0. That's all that really matters. 22-17. One thing about Notre Dame defense, they might give up some yards. They don't give up a lot of points.
Well, that was a great game. We'll see how that's going to go because Notre Dame is headed down to Wake Forest in Winston-Salem, and Vandy is hosting South Carolina. So we're going to see where that goes. Well, gentlemen, that was our College Football Show contest, and those 4 games. We're going to have another College Football Show contest later on, but let's go through our Rapid 5 from last week. We had the Big 5 games that we had. we talked about USF and Illinois. Boise State, Oklahoma State, Boston College at Wake Forest, Washington, Utah, and Hawaii at Army. And gentlemen, we'll start with USF at Illinois in Soldier Field, the monsters of the Midway, Ditka, and all these things. But more importantly, where was Butkus? Where was Red Grange? They weren't there for Illinois. I'm sure Lovie Smith could have used them. Tough game though. USF 25-19. Mark, what are your thoughts real quickly on that one?
Yeah, Lovie could have used Mike Singletary in the fourth quarter in this game to help stop the USF offense because Blake Barnett really put on a show throwing the football. Over 400 yards passing coach in this game. He is the real deal. Here's a kid that's traveled all over the place. He was at Alabama, then he was at University of Arizona State. Now he's at USF. He's finally found a home, and he's doing a terrific job at the quarterback position, throwing the ball, spreading the well, putting everyone in position, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends, distributing the ball extremely well. They had to have it in the fourth quarter. He got it done in the fourth quarter for USF.
You know, I love Charlie Strong. He coached for me at Notre Dame as well as at South Carolina. He loves Barnett. He told me in the offseason he thought that he was going to have a good, solid football team. To go on the road, to be down at Illinois, and to come back in the fourth quarter, I think they scored 13 points in the fourth quarter, to come back, win the game, that's going to give them an awful lot of confidence. And you have to be positive, though, at Illinois. You know, they could have been 3-0 had they won this game or been able to hang on, but they didn't.
Well, if you understand, USF had 5 sacks on the game. And up next for the Bulls, Charlie Strong and his Bulls, East Carolina, Illinois. It's a good warm-up game for them as they go to Penn State. Our second game, Boise State and Oklahoma State. Mark, we were talking about this. We thought this was going to be the Stillwater Air Show. First ever meeting between these two teams. Brett Ripien, Taylor Cornelius, they were going to air it out nonstop. And we'd heard a little rumor that Mike Gundy and the Mullet brought in a little defense. That kind of came to fruition. What are your thoughts? This was a great game, and Oklahoma State 44-21. When I say a great game, it was a great game for a team that likes balanced football. Talk to us, Mark.
Justice Hill did a terrific job for Oklahoma State rushing the ball, but the key of this football game is Brett Ripien had a good game for Boise State. The reason why Boise State lost this game, special teams. They had one block punt that was recovered that they took in for a score. They had another block punt that led to another score. If you played solid special teams, and we talked about this early in the season, that could make you or break you. In this game, Oklahoma State did a terrific job of getting to the punter, making things happen. Boise State was terrible. One, in punt protection, but the punter was so slow getting the ball off. I couldn't believe after the first one was blocked, he did it again, and they blocked it again. So right there's 14 points off the bat. Tough for them to recover on the road like that.
I don't believe there's any coach in the country that doesn't understand that 1 out of every 6 plays in a football game, 1 out of every 6 is some form of a kick. Consequently, you have to give special teams a great deal of time and effort in your practice. But last week I said that Oklahoma State had a new defensive coordinator. He's going to a 3-3-5. He's going to be more aggressive. He's going to make things happen, and it certainly showed up. I am not surprised that Oklahoma State won the game when people don't give them near enough credit because they haven't been able to beat Oklahoma on a consistent basis. But for the last 3 years, Mike Gundy, the coach at Oklahoma State, has won 10 games or more the last 3 years.
Mullet power.
There was a theme this week, and gentlemen, I think defense in the Big 12, Oklahoma State, but Brett Ripien, Boise State, great quarterback. But as my high school football coach, Bobby Redmond, Louisville, Kentucky, as he often said, I've never seen a great quarterback throw touchdowns from his butt. So Brett Ripien was sacked 7 times. That was a big factor in this game. So our third game in the Rapid Five, Boston College at Wake Forest. Plan of the game is real simple when you're playing Boston College. Stop A.J. Dillon. So move your safeties up close, and we're gonna box him. We're gonna stop him. Well, you know what? They did a pretty good job. He only scored 1 touchdown, but he ran for 185 yards, and from then on it was just throw over the top. Mark, you saw this game. What do you think? It was a Thursday night. Talk to us.
Great. Yeah, it was a great game to watch. A very competitive game. Went down the wire. I'll tell you one thing about Boston College. They're a sleeper in the ACC. Not only because of A.J. Dillon, but Anthony Brown, their quarterback, threw for 5 touchdowns in this game. They needed him because Dillon did a terrific job running the ball, $185. But when they had to have big plays, he threw the ball vertically extremely well, got the ball down the field of play. When I was watching, it wasn't any dinks and dunk, Coach. He went vertically with the football and made some great plays for the Boston College offense.
Looking at that football game, I was impressed with Boston College. I think they played pretty good defense. I was always impressed with Dillon, but I agree with you on Aaron Brown. He was outstanding. However, the one thing that stood out is Wake Forest could not play the ball in the air. They can't play a deep ball. They can't find it. They're either going to get pass interference calls or somebody's going to catch the ball. It's not like Wake Forest was blowing missed assignments in the secondary, like guys were running free. They had people in the same area code as the receiver. They just couldn't find the ball to play it. And Notre Dame, Wimbish or Aon Booker is going to have a great day.
Well, Wake Forest rushed for 298 yards, so I hope people have noted that. And also, freshman quarterback Sam Hartman, he may or may not be starting next week. We'll talk about that later. Next up, BC has 0-3 Purdue. Tough one, you know, those Boilermakers, they're hurting right now. We'll see where that's going to go. But Wake Forest is hosting the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. Now, Washington at Utah. As we said, been a long time since they've played this game in Utah. Both very balanced teams. 155, 172 pass to rush for Utah. 138, 123 for Washington. 138, 123 for Utah. Myles Gaskin, Washington, 143. That's kind of that may have been the difference maker, but 3 turnovers. Utah gets 3 turnovers. It's kind of a theme this week. Mark, talk to us about Washington, Utah.
Maturity at the quarterback position by Jake Browner. He made plays when he had to make plays. And you talk about Myles Gaskin. He's finally gotten on track running the football, over 140 on the ground in this game. I thought that was key, but I thought Chris Peterson, the head coach, did a great job of managing this game, calling this game. But it was the Washington defense that really stood out in this football game. They wouldn't let Utah score. They scored once in this game. That was it. They shut them down. They didn't give up big plays in this football game, Coach. That was the way that Washington should play. Run the football with Myles Gaskin and play tough defense. That's their calling card.
I think there's no doubt that Coach Peterson is one of the best coaches in the country, and maybe a little bit underrated, but he did a tremendous job at Boise State. He's turned around the Washington program. But in almost all these games we're talking about, who won, who lost, the losing team had on the average 3 turnovers. You can't win the ball game when you turn it over 3 different times, and that's what Utah did. And they also did inability to score in the red zone. Let's give Washington an awful lot of credit.
Well, Coach, Washington hosts Arizona State. Mark, you're friends with Herm Edwards. He's got to have them ready. It's going to be an exciting game. I can't wait to watch that. But, Coach, you may want to lead us into the next game. You sang a certain hymn as a cadence the other day when we announced our last game, Hawaii at Army. Hawaii comes into the long gray line. And you know what? As we said, it was a tale of 2 schools, a tale of 2 cultures, a tale of 2 quarterbacks. One throws, one runs. One goes to class on the beach, one marches to class. One has fans that wear grass skirts and hula hoops, and the other one has the long gray line and a bunch of cadets cheering them on. They go up there to West Point, and you know what? It was a great win, 28-21. Army holds on to win, and it was, we're going to air it out, but oh, by the way, you still have to run the ball in college football, as we know. And Kelvin Hopkins Jr. said, I can throw too. 6 for 10, 162 yards to go along with 110 rushing yards. Army pulled it out. Mark, talk about this.
Yeah, you mentioned it right there. Kelvin Hopkins Jr. did a terrific job in this football game. Everybody knows Army can run the football, but they don't throw the ball consistently, particularly down the field. And you mentioned he had 162 yards passing. I thought that was key in this football game. And for Hawaii, I thought for them, the 12 o'clock kickoff was 6 a.m. Hawaii time. I thought it finally caught up to them, but this was still a close game going down to the wire, Coach.
Yeah, but here, I watched the game. Opening kickoff, Hawaii takes it, marches right down the field, hardly like it's playing touch tackle, goes up 7-0. You think, well, they're going to do it every time. We do not give Army enough credit. They are a very, very solid, fundamental defensive football team. They put good pressure on the passer. They play zone coverage. They can't play man-to-man because they don't have the speed to stay with it. They break on the ball. They tackle well, and they're going to wear you down. The fact that it was up there in Michie Stadium with all your core cadets there watching, you're going to play very, very well. So I'm not surprised Army. Well, as a matter of fact, Mark, I'm surprised you didn't pick Army.
I usually go with the academies, but this time I just thought with the firepower, Cole McDonald throwing the football, the #1 passer in the country, I thought he'd be throwing the ball all over the place. He did have a big game, but it just wasn't good enough for Hawaii.
Had you been in the military like the colonel and I, you would have picked Army.
Hey, well, I will tell you, Coach Redmond's philosophy goes with Cole McDonald, too. Yeah, he can throw it. but 3 times he was on his butt, and that didn't help. And in big-time college football, you still got to rush, and Hawaii couldn't get that done, rushing for 42 yards. Well, gentlemen, that wraps up our Rapid 5. And what I want to talk about is the playoffs. Who do we have that when we started on week 1, we picked some playoffs teams? And who's going to be in the college football playoff, who's going to be in the national championship game, and who's going to hoist that trophy on January 7th in Santa Clara, California. Mark, you had Alabama, Clemson, another team in Washington, and now you have Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and Washington. So you have a substitute, so that's okay. Coach, Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Wisconsin. Wisconsin lost to BYU 24-21. So we're going to ask you, are you going to stay with the cards you're dealt, or do you want to discard and get a new one?
I want to tell you, I'm going to bail out while I still got some money in the bank. I was very disappointed in the ability to run the football by Wisconsin. I have to replace them. I still like the other 3. I like Georgia, I like Clemson, I like Notre Dame. I couldn't decide between Oklahoma and Ohio State. I'm going with Ohio State, and here's why. I worry about Oklahoma's defense. For example, against Iowa State, they gave up 27 points, 400-plus yards. When Iowa State played Iowa, they gave up 3 points and 188 yards to Iowa State. So that tells me Oklahoma still has tremendous problems on defenses. Remember, last year in the playoff, they lost to Georgia, 52-50, something along that line. So I'm going to go with Ohio State in there instead of Wisconsin.
Be careful, Coach. Be careful, because you had Wisconsin from the Big Ten. I had Michigan State from the Big Ten. They both lost early in the season. I'm not going with another Big Ten school. You go ahead and go with Ohio State.
Well, but say the difference, Mark, is I want to win and you don't. You just want to be impressive on TV. I want to win.
I got Alabama. That's all I'm going to say. Roll Tide.
I got Georgia.